The final round of NRL Fantasy, round 27 of the 2024 season. I just want to say congratulations to anyone who won their head-to-head finals last week. Massive achievement. It was a big year. It was 6 months of work. You got it done. Congratulations. For those of you who lost in the finals, tough year, but we'll learn from it. We'll come back next year even stronger. And for everyone chasing our final, maybe your league commissioner set it up for this week, or if you're going for overall in particular, then this is an exciting week for you. Shout out to a few people we've been chatting to this week who are in the top 10, top 20, top 30. Particularly my mate Jay-Z, who's sitting in second place there and primed for a big run here as well. So let's get into this week. So this week we're going to talk about a few things. And then next week we're going to do the awards show. Again, link in the description as well for that. So if you want to vote on your fantasy MVP, fantasy hooker of the year, middle forward of the year, half of the year, all that sort of stuff, get into that link below, get your votes in before the end of the week, and you'll be a part of that too. Now, for this week, we're going to talk about captaincy options predominantly. This is going to cover trades as well. So if you have a trade left, I'm going to be talking about players who are worth using that last trade on. There is 1 week left. So basically, the only question is this player going to score well this week? Do they have big upside this week? Do they have safety and security this week? That's what we're going to talk about today, and that's what we're going to start with. So first up, Isaah Yeo. I'm going to click into him because he has been on fire lately. Now, Yeo's been pumping out some big scores last couple of weeks with some attacking stats as well. So he's had a try assist the last 2 weeks. He had the try last week as well. He's been pumping out those 85-point games. Now, this week he has the Titans. The Titans game is okay on paper. The issue for me with this one is that he's going to be relying on some attacking stats. So if Yeo doesn't get the attacking stats, but let's say the Panthers do run away with this game, which I think they will, then Yeo probably gets a rest at some point. Now, that rest could be, at the 70-minute mark, at the 75-minute mark if this game stays closer. It could also be at the 50-minute, 60-minute mark if we're unlucky here. So I reckon there's a chance, and I'm probably forecasting him for about 60 minutes in this game. Now, Isaah Yeo, 60 minutes, I'd probably put him down for about 50 points the way he's playing lately. So that's what I've got him written down for. That's the issue with captaining Isaah Yeo this week. He could get that little rest, that mini rest. The Panthers, they are playing for something here. They're playing for that home final, and they definitely want that. But at the same time, you just got to keep that in mind. He might get a rest in this one. So I like Isaah Yeo again. I've been talking about him as that safe captain option. He's still a very safe option, but he does have that risk. So keep that in mind. And for that reason, personally, I'm going to have a bit of fun with my captain. I'm not going to go with Isaah Yeo. I'll tell you who I go with, and I'll tell you what. Spoiler, it's way further down the list who I'm going for this week. Last week I had Ponga. So Ponga got me about 80 points, which I was pretty happy with. Now, Nicho Hynes is another one we can talk about here. Payne Haas, Nicho Hynes, they were 2 super pods we chatted about last week. Look, Nicho's coming back and playing again this week, but he had an absolute stinker of a game last week. Now, Manly are missing some players. They're missing a few guys this week. So obviously no Tommy Turbo. Koula comes into fullback. Koula is actually interesting as well, by the way, if you need to make trades. Let's say you have multiple trades. Koula is about 390K, so very attractive there. But for Nicho Hynes in this game, look, I've got the Sharks as my tip for this one. I think the Sharks will run away with it. I think Nicho Hynes is going to be a big part of that as well. So if you want to take a gamble, 750K, it's pretty cheap for Nicho. Look, 33 points last week. There are a few plays that nearly broke off for him. The issue is Trindle is taking a lot of the ball playing number 7 responsibilities for Nicho Hynes. So I'm not confident in this at all. I would say that, the forecast here is probably about 50 points for Nicho Hynes, but there is that chance. There's always that chance when he steps out in the field that you're going to get 100 plus from Nicho Hynes. So if you want to take that gamble, roll the dice, there is massive upside in this, but there also is the risk, 33 points last week. Again, sort of carrying a few injuries, that sort of thing as well. There is the risk that Nicho Hynes does underperform, but if you want a big, big swing for the fence, Nicho Hynes is a great option for that. Rolling through here, Jahrome Hughes. We'll talk about these guys a bit more straightforward, but with Hughes, he comes back in this week. The Storm aren't resting too many players in this one. Now, for Hughes, he's got the Broncos. He's got Cam Munster back in. So historically, his average with Munster is in that sort of low to mid 50s area. Now, the Broncos are a team that's not doing much defense right now. They got smashed by the Dolphins last week, conceded 110 points to Herbie Farnworth. Different position to Hughes, but worth shouting out. So for Jahrome Hughes, you're basically saying, I'm backing this guy to score a couple of tries in this game, or to have a try and have a few line breaks, set up some tries, whatever it is there. Now, if you think the Storm stomp all over the Broncos in this one, which is a fair bet, no Payne Haas in this one, they're missing a few guys from the back line. it's a lighter Broncos side, then Jahrome Hughes is a great shout for you. But the risk here, again, we talk about that with the Panthers and Isaah Yeo as well, is that Jahrome Hughes could get a rest early in this game. He could come off early. He might take a back seat. They've got Wishart on the bench. Wishart could spell anyone, though. That's the issue. So I think Hughes is probably pretty safe, but you're really backing him for those big attacking plays. So if he doesn't hit those, not super worthwhile, not relevant, but I think Hughes is as good an option as any this week and a pretty good captain option that you could look at. To keep rolling through here, Paddy Carrigan, he's another nice one. So he's in a pretty good spot where no Payne Haas is in, which means he goes up to that 60s average. The issue here is that they're basically out of the finals, right? So Payne Haas isn't playing. He's got this Melbourne matchup. Melbourne are looking good. They're not resting too many players. You'd expect the Storm to carve this one up. And if you think the Storm are going to carve up, then Paddy Carrigan, he's going to be in a team that's getting beat up in a game where they're not really in contention. So if you're looking at Paddy Carrigan, you're basically saying you think the Broncos will stay close in this game or win this game. That's the only way that I would consider captaining Paddy Carrigan. If you think the Broncos are going to get smashed, then don't even look at him. He won't get the 80 minutes. That's what I'd expect there. They're not going to play Carrigan for 80 minutes in the game where they're getting smashed and not competing for a final spot anyway. So, yeah, for this one, I would say if you're tipping the Broncos, Carrigan's a really good captain option. I'm not tipping the Broncos, so for me, I'm not keen on this one. We'll keep rolling through. So Damien Cook, worth a shout here. The Roosters have a lot of injuries. Again, I'm not super hyped on him. He's not played 80 minutes the last couple of weeks. He's played good minutes, 65 and 78, but just want to shout out that he hasn't played that full 80 minutes. They're missing Cam Murray as well. They're missing a few players, actually, Jack Whiten too, a few other guys from the South Sydney team. So Cook probably gets more minutes because of that. Probably stays on the field longer, but I don't know. I just reckon it's a bit of a dicey game. You got South out of the finals. I'm not a fan of it, but at the same time, I could totally see him popping off and breaking off some plays against the Roosters, who are missing a bunch of guys right now. So if you like Cook, I'm okay with it, but it's risky. Dylan Edwards, we'll talk about him too. So been disappointing last 2 weeks since we all got him. He didn't score below 40 before the last fortnight. Now he hasn't scored over 40 the last fortnight. So he's been tough to support. He has the same risk as Yeo. He could come off early in this one, could get a rest. They've obviously got a few options on the bench and the extended bench for outside backs. So wait and see, I guess, how that one sort of looks closer to kickoff. But for Dylan Edwards, Titans is a good matchup. We like the matchups. That's why a lot of us got him in. I just don't trust him with his recent scoring. So I don't like him as a captain. But at the same time, on paper, everything is right here and he should be good. So up to you whether you want to make that call. I'm not feeling it this week. Tedesco is a good shout here. So I've heard a lot of people talking about Teddy as a captain. I would say he's going to be quite a commonly captain player this week. And he's been pumping out some big scores. Obviously, the Roosters, they've had Brandon Smith, they've had Sam Walker, and they've had Victor Radley all ruled out for pretty extended periods of time. So for Teddy, it's a hard one to call. The Roosters being good and in good form and setting out a good ball and him making those big attacking plays is awesome. But at the same time, if they're missing some guys and he takes more responsibility, runs the ball more, has the ball in his hands more, that's a good thing too. So Teddy's a guy you could jump onto this week. Again, look at the fixture. It's one game that you're picking these guys up for. One game you're captaining them for. So if you think South Sydney get beat up by the Roosters, which I think is a good chance, then Teddy is a good shout. The other thing I'll point out here too is Conor Watson at hooker. He's a bit more of a playmaking hooker as well. So he's going to sort of take that scoot and then look for a guy like Tedesco. And you think about the prime Teddy highlights in State of Origin, a lot of those were coming off Damien Cook in those similar sorts of plays. So my view is that we're going to see a Conor Watson, James Tedesco combination a bit here, and Teddy is a good shout. I will mention on the Roosters here as well, Conor Watson, as it stands right now, is my captain for this week. And it's not a certainty thing. So there's a few elements to this, right? The first one is not logic at all, and it's just how I feel about it. I feel like Conor Watson owes me a big score. So I might as well just captain him and get that big score out of him. That's not why I'm doing it, but I do feel like he owes me because it's been a bumpy ride with Conor Watson down the stretch. Second thing here is he's starting at hooker. So he's going to get plenty of minutes at hooker. He runs the ball a ton, makes heaps of tackles at hooker. Third point is he's got South Sydney. So again, I think Conor Watson really cuts them up through the middle. They're missing Cam Murray and they're missing a few other guys as well. So their forward pack is depleted. And you've got a Roosters team who, they got some new combinations. So I think they might just fall to Conor Watson playing a bit more of that individual style out of hooker as well. So Conor Watson's my lean towards captain. Docker Clay is on the bench, which is a bit risky. So we need Conor Watson to play some lock minutes as well to flesh out at least 60 to 70, potentially 80 minutes in this game. So Watson's my guy, but I'm seeing a lot of people jumping on Tedesco as well. Let's keep rolling through here. Herbie Farnworth, man, what a guy. How good has it been owning him? You could look at him as a captain option again this week. So just to analyze this one a bit more deeply, he is up against Bradman Best in this game. So Herbie Farnworth, Bradman Best, it is two of my favorite centers in the game right now. Two guys who you could probably captain this week as well, both of them. Now, Herbie Farnworth, he racks up a lot of his points through the middle. So he gets involved in the attack in a lot of different creative ways. He makes a lot of hit-ups, has a lot of offloads through the middle. He's a real work rate guy, and then also has that attacking polish. So I like Herbie Farnworth this week. I don't think that you're going to captain him necessarily, but this is a really interesting matchup in that you got the Dolphins versus the Knights playing for that final top 8 spot. So I think both teams will be switched on. I don't know. It could be the kind of game where Herbie really lifts. Like he lifted last week. He could really lift in this game, pump out a big score. He's really as good a captain as anyone on this list because he has been pumping out such a strong base of points as well. So the big attacking play has been happening, but he's still running 150, 200 meters in base. He's still getting all those offloads, tackle breaks, defensive stats. So Herbie Farnworth, good shout this week. An option you can consider if you think the Dolphins are going to get the win against the Knights and they're going to be playing finals footy. That's the key there. You want to be backing an outside back from a team you think is going to win. If you think the Knights are going to win, I actually don't hate Bradman Best as well, by the way. So if you've got trades left, super pod, Bradman Best, I love that move. Herbie, we love Herbie, but at the same time, I think Bradman Best is just unstoppable on that Newcastle left edge, and he could pop off in this game as well. Rolling down the list here, Tarpanay, I'm not considering really at all. What did he score last week? 60 points. Look, he's safe. I don't need to talk about it. He's going to score you 50 to 65 sort of thing, right? And he does that every week. St. George is a matchup where they don't seem to like to tackle much. At least they didn't against Parramatta. So, he could go well there. DCE against Cronulla. I've got DCE in the losing team in this game in my tips, so that's not a great piece of news. Good news is his kick meters jumped back up to about 600 last week, so that was really good. But the run meters stayed in the 30s. So low run meters still, good kick meters. So attacking plays, 60 points is okay. I think a losing game against Cronulla. He has historically averaged much higher when Turbo's been out, though. So it's been in the 60s, which is a good thing. But I don't know. I just look at this. I don't think he's got it in him this week. But at the same time, like I always have to put this caveat down. DCE can score 100 points any given week where he just has one of those games and he just gets it done. DCE could be 45, in 10 years' time and still come out and score 100 points. Like, he's just one of those guys who he finds a way to score in a lot of categories. He's a very strong attacking player, can run the ball like anyone else as well. He's an absolute beast. So he could score well. He's just not my pick this week, and I don't think it's going to be a good game for Manly. I think Cronulla are going to do a pretty good job in this one and sort of establish some intent heading into the finals there. They've got a few outside backs back as well. So Mulatalo, Katoa's back, Ramian's back too, Iro's in there. It's their full-strength back line and a lot of their full-strength forward pack as well. Rolling down, Jaden Campbell up against the Panthers. I think you just can't captain a guy like Jaden Campbell against the Panthers. Needs those big attacking plays. Could absolutely find them. He could go well, but so I'm not saying bench him. Absolutely start him. But against Penrith, the upside is limited. Gussie Crichton, again, great option here. 43 points last week is underwhelming, but I think he pops up against South Sydney. They've been very, very loose defensively. You look at the fact that they let Samuel Ofinu, for example, tear them to shreds. So, yeah, Gussie Crichton, he's a good shout. The only risk here is that they do have Sua Wong on the bench. That concerns me a little bit. You got Tupanua in the starting side, and he's not necessarily an 80-minute player. So I've got Gus Crichton forecast for about 65 minutes of play in this game, which is less than ideal. So you're picking him to grab a few attacking stats in this one. Totally viable. But then you think about the fact they don't have Sam Walker as well. So I'm just thinking about a few of those things. I think Gus Crichton will be good in this game, though. In fact, maybe the fact they don't have Sam Walker might make them more open just hitting the back row on the crash ball. We'll see if it happens. I think Gus is a good shout. There's just a bit of risk with the minutes there. Harry Grant, exact same boat. Risk with the minutes. Broncos, good matchup. I like Harry Grant. I wouldn't captain him this week. That's my advice there. Cam McInnes, he can score well, but his minutes have been pretty dicey recently. So, again, not my pick. I think they'll beat Manly It's going to be a close game, but I just feel like Cronulla are going to ascend this week. That's kind of my feel on it. Looking at the two teams as well, no Jason Saab for Manly, no Turbo, bit of an experience in the back line, and a forward pack matchup that favors Cronulla as well. That's how I see it. So I think Cam McInnes might get a rest. Hudson Young, you got him actually. He's a really good captain option this week. So again, we look at the try that Sean Lane scored against the Dragons last week. Sort of veered slightly to the left, and all Dragons players seemed to just part for him and cut through, scored that try. Hudson Young could be a massive beneficiary in this matchup, depending on how St. George play. But Hudson Young is one of those guys who he's been pumping out really big scores lately. He's been hitting 60 plus, 70 plus, 80 plus a lot recently. And he's been hitting a pretty solid base as well. So if you don't have Hudson Young and you want to pod in the back row, I like Hudson Young. And if you have him and you're considering him as captain, I'll give that my tick of approval as well. I think he's going to be good in this game. Rolling down, Fogarty is such an underrated option. So if you do have trades left, Fogarty is playing next to Ethan Strange this week. He's been totally out of it, not scoring well recently. But next to Ethan Strange, he goes back to being that automatic 60-point guy. I don't normally like to guarantee things, right? But if he plays, assuming he's all fit and all that sort of stuff, I'm pretty confident that we see that 55 to 70 points from Jamal Fogarty in this game. A really solid score from him, especially against St. George. I think he'll do really well in this one. So rolling down, Gagai, interesting shout. Ponga, we'll talk about him as well. 76 last week, my captain last week, but not the guy I'm jumping onto this week necessarily. So again, I think this Dolphins matchup is tricky. I still haven't decided what my tip is in this game. I've just got a feeling it's going to be a bit more Brad and Best dominated than Kalen Ponga dominated. But at the same time, if Best is dominating, it opens things up for Ponga. So he could be a good shout this week. I'm just not feeling it being that blow-away sort of score from him. So I've got him jotted down in my head as sort of a 50 to 60 kind of guy this week. That's based on just vibes completely, right? But last week I had him really pumped up. I thought he might go even higher, actually, than the 76 score he got. So, yeah, I'd know about Ponga. If you like the option, you can go for it. I don't mind it. But he's really going to have to take over this game. It's a must-win game for them to make the finals. So it's totally viable that he might just get his hands on the ball a ton, do a lot. Dolphins have been leaking some points here and there. They shut down the Broncos last week, but Ponga's a different beast. So you could take this bet. I don't mind it. It's just not a bet that I'm taking this week personally. Rolling down the list, Kalamatangi, not a consideration. Eli Katoa against Brisbane could be a shout. Preston went well last week, but the minutes haven't been great, so I'm not going to give him that shout. Lockie Galvin's another one I'd consider here. So Spoon Bowl up against Parramatta. Para have been leaking some points deluxe recently. Lockie Galvin is that beautiful running game, that beautiful playmaking game for the Tigers. He is just doing it all. So last game of the year, I think, again, especially in Campbelltown, I think Galvin could be good in this one. I've got him jotted down as a higher score, so a 60-plus scorer in this game. That's just the vibes I've got for this one, right? So last round of the year, it's very hard to predict these things, but you've just got to sort of imagine the game and think about how you think it's going to go. So, earlier in the year, we go through all the stats. It's very stat-focused. By the end of the season, at this point, it's throw it up in the air. You just gotta make a guess based on the way the winds are going. So for me, I think Galvin goes well in this one. I think Parramatta win this game, but I think Galvin is very, very strong. I do think Dylan Brown, by the way, he's further down the list, but I think he's a good shout as well this week too. And he could carry on that form from last week, even though he's been very disappointing the last 2 months, and be strong in this game too. I'm predicting a bit of a Lockie Galvin, Dylan Brown type shootout from the two number 6s. To keep rolling through here, Max Plath, safe option without being exciting. Jacob Little missed the game last week. He was away with the birth of his child. So if you bought him and captained him, you're in a tough spot. I've seen a few people did that. I know a few of the guys up the top, even top 5, made that move. It's a rough one. It's a hard one to predict, but he's back this week against Canberra. Lomax is one I'm seeing thrown around as well. I don't love the Canberra matchup. I just think this could be a bit grindier than you want it to be. Not necessarily a super low scoring game, but with Lomax, I don't see him popping off for a massive score in this one. That's just sort of how I see it. I think we might see a quieter game, sort of that 44 to 50 point type game. I just don't think he's a captain consideration, but if you do like him, he's an okay buy for this week. Dylan Lucas, good shout for this week. Again, that must-win game. I'm pumping out some big scores. Just keep an eye on Kai Pearce-Paul, who is on the extended bench. And if you're considering buying Lucas, keep an eye on that to make sure that Pearce-Paul doesn't come in and steal a bench spot or steal the starting spot even from Lucas. To keep rolling through, Ola Kawatu, what a disappointment he's been for the run home. Ben Hunt, again, pretty quiet. Nikora versus Manly, you could consider it. It's pretty brave. I wouldn't do it. Both Firma, Robson. All right, we're going to roll down the list here now. Reed Marnie had a couple of tries last week. I wouldn't really read into that score too much. Terrell May is actually one that you could look at here. So if you needed a pod and you were buying someone, they're missing Warrior Hargraves and they're missing Victor Radley and they're missing Brandon Smith, which means Watson goes into that hooker spot. So there's a lot of reasons why Terrell May should get some minutes. He's not starting this week, but if he comes off the bench and plays 60, 65 minutes, then he's a guy who's going to score you 65, 70 points in this game. So I don't mind Terrell May. I think he's going to pop off this week. And if you have him, I like him as a pod captain. I like him a lot. I think he might grab a try against South Sydney too. So I'm a big Terrell May fan for this round. We'll keep rolling through. So King, Cotter, not interested. Watson, talked about him. I'm hyped on him. I think he pops off. I just think the Roosters will win through the middle section, right? I think they've got a few guys missing, but I still think South Sydney is going to get outmatched through that middle section. I think Roosters have a bit more fire in them as well down the stretch. Dylan Brown, I mentioned liking him as well. I think he could go well in this game too. So him and Galvin, I'm backing them. And then going down the list here, Val Holmes, Jacob Kiraz against the Cowboys. He's a guy who's been out of form the last couple of weeks, but he is a guy I've got as a bounce back option for this round. So again, you want that super pod captain. It's brave. It's very brave. Also no Matt Burton, which is not ideal, but he's a guy who could pop off. Jaden Sewer's okay. Scotty Drinkwater. Look, I talked about him last week. I wasn't keen on him. I'm even less keen this week with dogs, so don't do that to yourself. Joey Manu, if you need a pod, I don't know. He's not at 6. That's the problem. But he could be an option that cars up against South Sydney. So he's in his last few games of NRL now. I think he takes more responsibility with Sandon Smith coming into the halves. So we could see a big Joey Manu game. We could also see that edge getting a lot of ball as well, him and Dom Young. Particularly with no Sam Walker, they might just go to those primary playmakers like Tedesco and Joey Manu more frequently instead. Keanu Keeney up against Penrith, you can't captain him, but at the same time, I'm happy he's back. My team needed him last week, but we got him back this week. And then DeBellin, good score last week, still not my captain. Papali'i, sort of meh. Toe, I don't love Toe without Cleary in this matchup. You need a few tries, and the ball hasn't been going his way recently, so not for me, but could pop off. Trey Fuller, if you want a pod, he's a pod. He's a big pod. Could be one you consider. Corey Jensen, now without Payne Haas in the team, he goes back to being that automatic big minutes, big gun. Now for Corey Jensen, I don't know, you almost drive him down for 60, right, at this point, which I don't think he's going to go much above 60 unless he scores another try, but I've jotted him down to sort of 55 to 60. It's a very safe option. If you are in a head-to-head final, it's this week, for example, then I actually quite like the idea of going with Corey Jensen. If you're the favorite who just needs those safe points, so he should be good this week. It's Okamanu, nah. Curran, nah. Iro, yeah, nah. All right, these are all sort of pretty firm no's from me. Keep rolling through. Bradman Best, I like him as a pod. I think he's a very exciting pod. I think this matchup could be a good one for Bradman Best. We saw glimpses of it last week. It didn't really pan out completely, but I think it'll pan out this week. So 63 last week. I think he could go 80 plus this week. Then Ruben Garrick in a losing team is my forecast. I don't think so. Jahrome Hughes is a nice pod. So again, if you're money restricted, I actually think he goes off in this game. I think he absolutely kills it. Might get a rest is the thing to consider, but I think he will tear them to shreds. That running game is going to be out in force. That's also part of why I'm fading guys like Toe, Isaac Tungo, all that, because I think Jahrome Hughes is going to steal the show and be that primary ball runner in this game. Then down the list here, I mean, look, who else have we got? Like Sean Bloor, come on, mate, get it done this week, please. Yoas, Weeks, Dom Young, yeah. There's probably not too many other players that I'm really targeting from this list down the bottom here. I guess the other guy I'd mention would be, I'll just scroll up so I can search his name. But the other guy I'll mention here is someone who could score 100 plus this week. And I hate to see it. When I was going through the team lists, I was raging on Team List Live that he's back at fullback because he's such a good player, Koula. He's such a good player. We've just had such bad luck for fantasy this year where he's unfortunately at the wrong times caught little injuries and missed games for us and not made the most of his chances at fullback. But he's got the fullback role this week. He's got a game against Cronulla where they're going to be desperate. I could see him playing really well in this one, pumping out a big score. So if you have trades left, maybe. So I talked to someone earlier today. They had, I think it was like 2.7 million for 4 players. First guy I grabbed was Koula because he's 379k. And if you buy him first, you free yourself up all this cash to buy 3 big guns. So if you're buying multiple players this week and you're restricted on cash, don't get a bunch of mid-range guys. Get Koula and then get the big guns that you like. So he's the last guy I'll mention here as a good option as well. So to summarize, guys, there's a lot of captain options for this week. It is tricky. It is very tricky. It really comes down to how you see the last games of the round going. If you think that, the Tigers or Parramatta will get one up in the Spoon Bowl by a big margin, guys like Dylan Brown, Lockie Galvin are good shouts there. Looking at the Sharks game, you could talk about Nicho Hynes here as well. DCE is an option there if you think Manly will just pump the Sharks, for example. There's other options like the Panthers boys. So you've got players like Isaah Yeo, if you think he plays big minutes. So he'll play big minutes if the game stays close. Do you think the Titans keep it close? Or do you think the Panthers blow it out? Maybe Jahrome Hughes is shout. There's just a lot of options here. At the end of the day, I'm just going to say go with your gut on this one. So last year in the final couple of rounds, I think it was DC and Koula from memory, who both pumped out massive 80, 100-point games, and they were the guys who did it. Now, that was not the commonly discussed captain option for last year. So we weren't on here saying, oh, yeah, you have to captain DC, you have to have captain Koula. The last round in particular is the round where you just make the call, right? You just go, all right, you know what? My conviction, I've played this game for 27 rounds now, at least, maybe played for multiple years, but my conviction says this is what's going to happen. I want to take this gamble, roll the dice on it. If it comes off, you're a hero. If it doesn't, well, you don't have to remember it for too long because we go into the off season straight away anyway. So that's my advice here, guys. Hopefully it's been a good season for you. Hopefully you're in a good spot with your finals, overalls, whatever it is. I'm trying to stay in the top 1,000. My team has been ravaged by injuries. Keeney late withdrawal last week was brutal. Obviously copped Whiten, Fafita, a few of the other guys this week, but Sorensen comes back. So we'll see if he scores a try. So yeah, best of luck this week, guys. It's been a really cool season. We're going to do fantasy awards soon as well. So that is in the link in the description below. If you haven't voted yet, get your votes in on that 100%. Because that's going to be decided by your votes, right? So you get to choose. And Rookie of the Year voting, by the way, it doesn't include players who have positional nominations. So Galvin and Iro, they're not in that section. They're in the halves and centers section. All right, guys, appreciate you being here. Been a great year. I'll see you guys on the next video, award show, all that sort of stuff. Peace out. Have a good week.